So I can't see you all, but raise your hand if budgeting gives you anxiety. Yeah, you're not alone. Raise your hand if permitting gives you anxiety. Oh my gosh. You're definitely not alone there too. And raise your hand if you want to feel empowered with budgeting and permitting for your events. I can certainly relate to that. I'm excited to be here with you today. The goal of this webinar is to help you feel empowered to host a safe, funded, and successful event without with less stress and more fun. Make that smaller. Okay. Hello, my name is Samantha Montanaro, and I have been doing marketing and events for over 20 years. And I've been involved in Portland-based community event experience for 9 years. I'm passionate about creating safe and smooth events because if you've hosted an event before, which I'm sure most of you have, you are in the know that when an event is safe and smooth and you have all of your I's dotted and T's crossed, that it just makes it even more fun and amazing for the reasons that you're hosting your event. So let's get into it. Budgeting for success. What is an event budget and why is it important? So at its core, an event budget is a fiscal blueprint for any event, large or small. It provides a detailed outline of expected and anticipated expenses, potential revenue, and also room for the unforeseens. And this enables event organizers to effectively manage your resources and make informed financial decisions. When you're organizing an event, costs can quickly spiral out of control if it's not monitored closely. Creating a budget and working with it ensures that you remain within the designated financial parameters, providing a full holistic view of all of the touch points for anybody who has financial interest in your event. Being proactive prevents overspending, hopefully helps you make more money, and in the long run helps you maintain financial health throughout the event planning process with anyone who has a vested interest in your event. Obviously, budgets are important because not all aspects of your budget hold equal importance, first of all. Um, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but if you don't have an event venue, what does spending budget on decor even matter? So obviously the importance of the venue or of the food and drink is going to be more important than other aspects of your event. Um, streamlining decision making is one of the best things about creating a budget. It makes it easy to make decisions when you can see all of your potential expenses. And you have them all right in front of you. Budgets are important because they help you prepare for risk mitigation. There's lots of unforeseens in events, and when you know what you could potentially run into and what costs are involved, you're going to be more prepared. Especially for us in doing business district and community event planning, transparency and accountability is really important, especially if we have corporate sponsors or funders or we get grants. Being able to show how and where and when we're spending our money just increases transparency and accountability. And in the long run is definitely going to make you look like the best event planner out there. Budgets also help with clear communication just between teams. If there's multiple people involved in planning an event, multiple decision makers when it comes to the budgeting, sometimes things can fall through the cracks and someone can make a decision on spending something while somebody else made a decision on spending on something else, and you can run into issues. So this helps with clear communication internally for your team. And last of all, budgets are important because they help you measure your financial success. For us who are planning regular events, being able to see what our events look like year over year or quarter over quarter, or however frequently they're happening, being able to see which ones are more financially successful than others and why. It's just going to help you overall plan more successful events. So let's get into budgeting here. There are some key components that should always be measured. And we're gonna go over some event budgeting software tools, and I do have some links that I will share with you. So just a heads up on that. But some key components of the things that typically cost money for throwing an event. We have the venue. That's obviously pretty basic, but something that people can forget about is the amenities. Does it come with chairs and tables? Do you have to rent those? Sometimes in venues, there's an additional cost for any of the amenities that might be available. So it's important to look at those things right off the bat. Food is always one of the biggest costs, food and drink. People need to be taken care of. It's definitely a basic need. And that's always a big line item. Decor, music, signage, and marketing can also take up a big line of your budget, or not, but it's certainly an important piece. Staffing, AV equipment. Do you need a microphone or a screen or a projector or a PA? What type of entertainment are you hiring? Are you paying them, and what equipment do they need? Security, cleanup, and all kinds of unforeseens as well. One key component that I forgot to put on this list that's important to note before we move on is revenue. I look forward to sharing with you, maybe having a little bit more of a casual conversation on things that have worked for me in the past, but I typically create a separate tab in my Google Sheet for revenue and track that via a different sheet. And then you can have a total that pulls over to your major budgeting spreadsheet. Next up, budget management tools. So there's a whole bunch of different software options out there. I've used a number of different ones, but my favorite is just Google. Google Sheets is such a great way because it's free and most people have access to Google Docs. And using Sheets is simple and it's a great way to track what you have going on. I do have a link for you with this, and I will share it with you in a little bit here. But Google has a free event budgeting tool or a spreadsheet that's already built out for you that you have access to at all times for free. Some of these other event budget management tools and planning tools can be really helpful if you're in a business district that's hosting a ton of events. Some of them can be spendy. I frankly haven't used EventPro, Adaptive Planning Guide, or Planning Pod, but I have used other tools like Monday.com. It's very expensive, and the only reason that I used that in my past experience is because we had a full-time event management company that was doing sometimes upwards of 25 events per month in different cities and locations. So that made sense for us to pay for. But I feel like for thinking about business districts and planning street fairs or community gatherings or meetups and that kind of thing, Google Sheets is a really great way to manage that. So let's go through some steps on how to create and manage your budget. If you were at the last webinar about that I hosted about the Lunch and Learn about hosting creative events, starting with the big picture and visualizing what you really want to happen is the best way to start with your budget. Close your eyes and think about what you want this space to look like and how you want people to feel and what components are there. What does the music sound like? Are there food trucks? Maybe there's a pop-up restaurant going on. Is it a sit-down dinner? What are the drinks? What are the entertainment options? Is it all ages? Is it adults only? Thinking about those big picture things in the beginning and just brain dumping, writing those things down is a great way to start because you don't want to miss any of those things that might end up costing you money in the long run. So starting with that big picture, is the best way to start. And then you break it down. You get into your sheet and write down each line item. I wish I could like share two screens at once, but that's not possible. Um, so maybe here, let me see if I can get into this. Okay, I'm just going to keep moving forward. And again, I'll share that the Google Sheet because I think it's really helpful to see. So when you break it down, like we went over in that last slide, over here, putting a line item for each of these, and then putting down what you expect it to cost, and then the actual cost is a simple way to go about it. A rule of thumb in general for budgeting is adding 10 to 15% on top of your total anticipated budget for unforeseens. This is a really great way for you to make sure that you have some wiggle room. The worst thing that can happen with a budget is that you just really undershot it and you're in the panic-stricken moment of needing more funds as your event, gets closer or is happening. Number 4, I put review contracts on here because if you're somebody who is having entertainers come to your event, it's important to really review those contracts. Here's a good example. I host and plan an event called Summer Nights with Historic Park Rose, and we have upwards of like 20 different entertainment things going on. Face painting, bands, juggling. There's pop-up things all over the place. We had like craft table, different people running all kinds of different pop-up activities. And last year at our event, there was fires and the air quality was really poor and we almost had to cancel our event. We ended up not having to cancel it, but we did have a couple of our entertainers who did not feel safe to come to that event. In the contracts, there were a couple of those contracts that we had engaged in. We had already paid a down payment and we had signed the contract, and they stated if for some reason there was something that what made it not safe, that there was a non-refundable deposit there. So that's why I brought up this piece here, because sometimes, you agree to, oh, $300 for this face painter to be here. But if you don't think about the fact that there's maybe a $150 non-refundable deposit, and if there's some last minute changes, this is important for your budgeting for obvious reasons. So once you have your budget set up with the line items of what it is, what is anticipated, and then the actual, and you're getting into your event planning, this is where you just simply track and adjust. You can make adjustments as is needed, but you just start to get a really serious financial snapshot of your event. And something that I love about this part is this is an empowering part about creating a budget, because if you add on that 10 for 15% on top, if you're doing your diligence of getting different quotes and bids for, different vendors and people that you might be working with, finding the best deals for what you're looking for that impact of the big picture that you're dreaming about. It's a fun part of being like, wow, I thought that this venue was going to cost us $2,500, but we found this amazing spot that's $1,500. And for our initial anticipated budget, we now have $1,000 that we could potentially put towards other things. So the tracking and adjusting part is always fun for me as an event planner, because I feel like it opens up space to be empowered in my decision making and getting better and better at creating that budget from the beginning, anticipating costs and adding on those extra things so that it's fun to play with the extra money and feel like you're ahead of the game. Factoring in revenue can be really challenging, especially if you're doing a ticketed event that can be, you're like, I hope 200 people come. Maybe there ends up only being 100 tickets sold. So that part can be really challenging, but creating some scenarios can be really helpful. And obviously documenting everything is super, super important when creating and managing your budget. So I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second here and switch screens to this template because I don't want to go any farther without you guys being able to see this. Okay, can you see the budget screen?
Yep.
Great. So this is the free event budget template from Google. And you can really like Google it, or I can paste in the link in just a moment. But like I was stating, what's great about this is you can, add any notes that might be relevant to your event planning team as well. You can estimate how much you want to spend. I mean, sometimes it's good to work backwards on a budget. Say you have a grant for $10,000 and you want to stick within that budget. I mean, when you know you're working with 10,000, you can go through and what are, like we talked about already, going through those non-negotiables. A venue is a non-negotiable. Staff is non-negotiable. Maybe some basic equipment is non-negotiable. However, entertainment, decor, even cleaning can be negotiable in some ways. Can we organize volunteers for cleanup? Can we get a donation from a local business for decor? Are there entertainers or folks who are looking for exposure or who are involved in the community that just want to offer their services? So if you're working backwards, it can be great for you to, even just go through and really decide which things are non-negotiable and which are not. So this is pretty basic. And like I said, then you get the grand total. What I typically do is create another sheet for the revenue piece and then pull in that number. And that can also be a helpful way to go about that. So I'm going to stop sharing here and share this. I see some of you are in that, so you found it. But here is the link if anybody else would like it. So here we go. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back into the presentation. Thanks for your patience as I navigate screen sharing. Okay. All righty. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about funding your event because we're talking about budgeting. So for us in community event planning, there's a few different ways to fund your event. There are so many amazing grant opportunities through the city of Portland and other organizations, including Venture Portland, for event planning. If you are not already subscribed to our newsletter, please do so today. Maybe Jacob, you could post a link to where people can subscribe for the newsletter. That would be so helpful. Because especially in our Friday emails, we make sure to communicate any grant opportunities that are happening. Business districts rely on event planning for a lot of marketing efforts. And there's so many incredible grants available out there. Why not take advantage of that free money to get people together and have a really good time? Once you have some grants established for Historic Park Rose, we usually start with that grant process of how much money can we get from grants, to kind of create the foundation for our funding for our event. And then how can we create packages to get corporate sponsors involved? I'm pretty sure we're going to have I don't remember which month it's in, but we are going to be having a future Lunch and Learn webinar about sponsorship and about actually fundraising in creative ways and strengthening your sales skills and your collaboration skills to really bring in a lot of dollars to help your event be amazing. I added collaboration on here because I think especially in business districts, here's a good example I heard about, and I don't remember all of the details, but in Williams District, some of the businesses wanted to host an event, and I want to say it was for like Halloween or something. And instead of relying on other folks to like plan it and fund it and do it, a few different businesses came together and sponsored it together and collaborated to make that event happen. From what I understand, that event ended up kind of being picked up by the business association, and now it's a regular thing, and they still can come in as sponsors. But collaboration is such a great way to think about planning an event, particularly with local businesses. It's just mutually beneficial if there's, something being hosted that's going to drive revenue, bring people in the doors to be spending dollars. It's worth every penny. Last of all is ticket sales. And I know in a lot of community events, a lot of community events are free for accessibility, but sometimes things are ticketed, and it can be a great way to bring in some revenue. Okay, so I'm actually gonna push pause and maybe yeah, why don't we see if there's any initial questions right now about event budgeting before we go into the permitting piece. Does anybody have any questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
So I'm curious, as you're going through the planning process in an event and it looks like you're running over budget, is there any tips you can give in particular for, um, decreasing costs, so you can eventually cover the costs of the event that were higher than you thought?
Sure. Jacob, I love that question because it's like you have two choices here. Either raise more money for your event or decrease costs. Um, I think my go-to in those cases is like when you're going back to those key components, is it essential for the event? If you go through everything and you're like, you know what, this is all essential, then that's where you're going to start strategizing additional funding opportunities. Um, and just getting clear on that can help you like seal the deal on another sponsor. Um, I'm just going to make up a scenario, like say, for example, you're hosting a community event and you didn't anticipate, so maybe the venue said that they were going to donate the venue for you, and something happened where that venue fell through, and now all of a sudden you're in a space where you have to pay for a venue and you had not budgeted for a couple $1,000s for that. Being able to go to like one of your business association members or a business and being like, here's the situation. This is what we can do if you come in at this lead level to make sure this event can happen. Um, you can offer additional signage, additional marketing opportunities. This event brought to you by, those kinds of things can really help you fundraise in those last minute scenarios that can be a little bit stressful. But I think just, if you have your budget outlined and you've started from the beginning of really highlighting your key components, it should be pretty clear where to decrease costs. It usually comes in the form of decor and like some of those extra things. Those extra things tend to make events really excellent. So it's like getting creative there too. Maybe it's not necessarily getting rid of them, but how are we not going to the store and buying a whole bunch of balloons or like, decor items? We've worked with Scrap, PDX a lot. They work with a lot of nonprofit organizations. They'll donate a certain amount of supplies for folks. That tapping into your local resources, seeing if somebody is interested in helping supply that. I know East Portland Collective, I believe, does like they'll offer free services of doing crafts and stuff like that. So it often can come down to just getting creative or raising additional money.
Thanks.
Yeah. If there aren't any other questions, I'm gonna go into the permitting section of this presentation. All right, let's go into it. All righty, so permitting in Portland. Yay. The goal is always a safe and legal event. I don't know if anybody has experienced this, but there is nothing worse than I can imagine than having an event where the OLCC comes and pulls your bar, or the health department says that you cannot have those food trucks there because you didn't have your permits in line. So permitting is super important, and it really isn't rocket science. There's some amazing resources via the city of Portland, which I'll share some links. I have some resources for y'all that we'll get to in a bit here, but it just starts first with asking yourself the question of is this a public or a private event? Even for Venture Portland, we have some private events that we plan. Our private events don't require the same permits that public events require. Are you doing your event in a public right away? Are you needing a street closure? Is it in a venue that maybe already has some of these basic permits taken care of because they're an event space? So just getting clear on first of if this is public or private is a great way to start. Some organizations to consider when thinking about community event permitting. The Portland Bureau of Transportation and then the Oregon Department of Transportation are really big ones, especially for our street fairs. Those street closures are important for us in Park Rose because we're on Sandy Boulevard, which is a state highway. We have to go through ODOT if we're interested in doing anything on Sandy Boulevard or shutting it down or even doing decor over it. There's permitting through that. So that's important for you to pay attention to, and make sure you're really clear on if you're using public right of way, making sure that you're contacting the right organization there. OLCC is going to be in the picture if you have alcohol. The health department comes into play with food handling, and these two often go hand in hand. If you've ever gotten a permit through the city for having drinks, you have to have food. So these typically go hand in hand. The fire marshal can come into play if there's any risk of just evacuation plans for gatherings of a bunch of people coming together. This is something that I actually didn't even really think about until I was just doing my own research for this presentation and expanding my knowledge. If you're using any waterways, using the permitting services offered through the harbor master are going to be required. That's something I've never done before, so maybe that's a challenge for the future. Multnomah County can come into play for a few different things, and also TriMet. So any of these, it just depends. Some of the resources that I have that I can share with you through the city of Portland are going to be helpful in helping you assess as to which bureaus or organizations you're going to need to consider. Types of permits that are required in community events. Like I was talking about a little bit more, doing public streets, sidewalks, and plazas. That's really a big one in Portland, with making sure that you have the proper permits, just being in a public space and having the proper street closures. Public parks or pathways, fire permits are kind of always a thing, and it's just always something to really consider. Again, when you're bringing a whole bunch of people together and there is some sort of an emergency, what is the protocol? Events that utilize waterways, like I said, that's kind of a new thing for me that I hadn't thought about, but I think that's cool and important, of course. Noise variances is a big deal. Even if say you're having an event on a private property and it is a private event, but you're going to have a band playing, you're still going to need to get a noise variance permit. So it's definitely something to consider. Insurance requirements are really important in all of this too. Some of the permits that you need to get for your community event require insurance to even get the permit. So I have some cool resources that I'll share with you on that as well. And then last of all, like we touched base, the food handling, like we touched base on the food handling and alcohol service are important ones that, in my experience, they definitely really don't mess around with that. It's really important, to make sure that you're up and up on this, especially if you're having an all ages event. Okay. So here are some basic resources. I have detailed links, like I said, I'll share in just a second, but I just wanted to share too that we're here to help. Venture Portland has been involved in supporting the business districts for so long now, and you're not alone. It's awesome to be able to come together and share any resources that maybe we weren't familiar with before, especially for any newer business associations, or maybe you've been established and you guys just haven't been doing events in this way or doing public events. There's some really incredible resources, not only through the websites, but you can just reach out to me at any time. And I'm here to help. We're at Venture Portland. We're here to help. You're definitely not alone. So let's party. I hope that this overview on just some basic event budgeting and permitting has been helpful. Obviously, both of these topics can really go deep into depth, and I look forward to answering questions if you have any, or if anybody has a specific event that you're planning and you want to troubleshoot some stuff, we can do that together. Like we said, you're not alone. And the more that we come together and have 6 people who are throwing really successful events that continue to grow, have insight to share with you. And yeah, here's my contact information if you have any questions, and feel free to reach out at any time. It's been a pleasure sharing some basic info with you here on event budgeting and permitting. I'm going to post some links on permitting that have been really helpful for me in my event planning. Here is a few that you can save. That first link, if everybody checks that out, the resource guide through the Portland Events and Film Office. I was so grateful when this came out. Before there wasn't really anything quite like it. It was kind of a little bit more of a like, City of Portland, here's a list of permits and that kind of thing. But this resource guide I found to be like incredibly helpful. They have tips, for just preparing this, but even just asking the question of, do I need a permit, and some things to go through, it's been really helpful. I also wanted to highlight here that last link, the event liability link. This is really helpful as well, of figuring out like what kind of insurance, like, do you need insurance? The answer is yes. You want to prepare for worst case scenario type events. When you're gathering a whole bunch of people together, the chance of something happening is obviously higher than if you're just having a business association board meeting or something like that. So, getting clear on like what is possible and how much. I know that there's lots of special event permitting services out there in the internet that are like $100, and for me, in all of my years of event planning, we've found we luckily haven't really run into anything where we've had to use them, but we did find out after using one service for a while that it was pretty bogus. Like it was only going to cover very, very specific situations. And at the end of the day, it is worth it to just really make sure that you've got the right type of insurance for the types of permits and the types of events that you have. There is literally somebody who is a specialist in this who can help you as well. Renee's information is in that link. So I think that that's a great step as well, of like just giving them a call and being like, am I covered? You know, are we covered? And exploring the options. I know that event insurance can seem, it is really overwhelming. And there are just so many unforeseen situations that can come up, and getting clear on whether that's going to cover it or not. You know, just putting this out there because this is a real thing. Last year with our summer nights event, we hired security, and we went through scenarios of them, of like, what if somebody came in and pulled out a knife and like attacked somebody, or what if somebody pulls out a gun and starts shooting, or what if somebody is having a mental health crisis, and you know, or there's a fight, or there's etc. These are the types of situations where not only your security is really important, but your event insurance is really important, because if somebody does get hurt at that event on site, you're going to be having a conversation with that insurance company. It made us feel so secure to be working with that security company and our insurance company to run through those worst case scenarios. And then literally on site the day of, we had our staff, event staff, come and meet with the security people, and we walked through a few different scenarios. It's scary to think about, but I personally would rather take the moment to, you know, run through that and make sure that we're all on the same page as what's going to happen if something like this happens. It just made our whole staff feel so much more relaxed and safe and not worried. Just like, we've got this covered. So, one other link that I want to share with you all, and I can't wait to share this with the folks who attended our last Lunch and Learn Wednesday webinar about creative events. We were talking about Venture Portland developing some resources for services, but I found this link on one of the City of Portland sites, and it's through Travel Portland, but it's a pretty amazing directory of service providers. So I thought I would just share that. I had not run across that before, and I was like, whoa, it's like the holy grail of all kinds of different services. And I'm pretty sure in here they have, yeah, I mean, accessibility services. How cool is that? Making sure that your event is accessible for folks with all kinds of different disabilities. Catering, entertainment, event production and support, enhancements, rentals, security. That was a cool piece too. And temporary staffing. I also thought that was really cool. If you need, you know, I think for a lot of us in business districts, it's often volunteer run. Sometimes if you know you're working with a decent budget, it can be really worth it to invest in some temporary staff who knows what they're doing to come on and just help crush the day of. So yeah, I think that's about it. From what I have, I would love to answer any questions if there are any, or if anybody wants to share something that they're planning right now, or, you know, kind of troubleshoot anything together. Happy to do that. Yeah.
We're hoping to put on our Best of Brooklyn barbecue again this year. We did it a couple times and before the pandemic, and we're trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do it this time, because last time we had some pretty great partners and resources that we don't have this time. So I'm just trying to we're trying to figure out the whole barbecue piece of it. Because what we did before was sorry, my dogs are fighting in the background and they're too far away for me to get to them. So I'm sorry. But they are, we had brought in a barbecue, we had people donated, hot dogs, and we barbecued hot dogs, and we gave out free hot dogs to everybody. And it was great because we had a restaurant that was able to, provide all the food handlers and provide all the equipment, and we rented a barbecue, and, it was a great thing and everybody loved it, So, but now we don't have that resource. So we're trying to kind of figure out how to do the barbecue piece without that resource. I don't know. We
Yeah.
might just have to bring in a catering, to come in and actually just do it for us. But anyways, if
Sure.
anybody knows any resources for that, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because I know we've run into that too, where it's like, okay, what does this look like? Like just hiring, you know, hiring some folks and then us going through all the steps of getting all the permits and stuff. We found in Historic Park Rose, we've had that exact same scenario, and we've just found it to be more cost effective and like peace of mind driven to just find a catering company to work with. Um, so I know on that Travel Portland link, they've got the catering link. Um, we worked with, I can't remember the organization, but if I think of it, I will email you because we worked with an organization that does this. I don't know, for events, they often do barbecue type stuff because it's just fun in the summer. It's a little bit different, than having just kind of standard food trucks or other things. Um, but yeah, that you bring up a great point because you can't just like, oh, it's fine, we'll just buy a whole bunch of hot dogs and like I'll cook them up, I could, but I have to have a food handler's permit myself as an individual. You have to have the food handler's permit for the pop-up itself and have the health department come inspect of. Um, so yeah, I think, maybe even tapping even just in your network of like, is there anybody on your board or, in your network that does have their food handler's permit? Because if you do, maybe you do have some folks, because if they have it and you just have to apply for the food handlers one, it could be more cost effective. Does anybody else have any experience with that or ideas? Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. I really hope to be able to come. Do you have a date for that event?
Yeah, it's supposed to be July 25th.
July
So
25th.
in the
Okay, cool.
evening. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And we're gonna piggyback on a permit that's already in the park on that day. Because we have the Friends of Brooklyn Park Summer Park program that runs almost every day of the summer. And so we partnered with them so that we can use the park during the same hours as their permit. And then we just get a special use permit for that specific day for that specific event. So
cool.
the permitting process should be a little easier because there's already a permit in place for the park during that time. So we don't
Love
have to
that.
really
I
fight
I
with
love that
anything.
oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's also a pseudo fundraiser for the nonprofit at the same time. So we can, do some kind of a raffle or some kind of something, and then all the raffle proceeds will go to the nonprofit. So it's a good way to partner with our local nonprofit and the business association and kind of do a big like co-event. So
That's so cool. I mean, I love that
yeah,
you just brought up the idea. I didn't have that as a part of the presentation, but like seeking out other things that are potentially going on already and that collaboration piece of like, when you're thinking about funding your event, right? Like how brilliant is that to like, you already know something's happening, it's community based, you're able to, collaborate with them and get access to that permit, do a little bit extra from yours and have it be a fundraiser. Like how cool is that? It's great. I love that. Does anybody else want to share anything that they're working on or troubleshoot any ideas together?
I had a question just about timeline. So I know notoriously, Portland is very slow in approving permits. So I'm just curious, from the day of the event, what's the bare minimum amount of time you want to give to submit those permit applications, just so it doesn't run into a situation where you waited too long, you don't get approval, and then you're in big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, my baseline is 60 days, 2 months minimum before, but like ideally it's the first thing you do, if you're planning a community event. I don't know about y'all, but we typically work 5 months out, like I hopefully more, but like 6 months, 5 months in advance where we're like, okay, we have a date, we know what's going on. First step is usually permitting because we'd rather just get things rolling with it. And when you look at the permit applications, it helps you fill in the gaps too of like, what do we need to be able to submit this permit? But I know certain permits you can get with a pretty quick turnaround time, especially once you once you turn in your permitting with like the city of Portland, like for street closures, you'll get someone that you're working with that can be your point person. And I know that, for example, last year with our street closure, there was something unexpected that happened. Tanya, I want to hear from you on this because, well, I'm sure that's like a huge thing. I see your comment there though. So next I want to hear from you on that. But with our street closure thing last year, we had a different event planner that we found out the permit was not submitted for our street closure. I think it was like 6 weeks before the event. We submitted it quickly and got paired with somebody from the city. And they were also going through a change in who is supplying the like actual barricades. And that was the issue, is they weren't sure that there were enough barricades. So when you're doing a summer street closure, that's something you're really running into too. Like if, it's not just getting the permit, but like you need to have the appropriate barricades and things for it to be legal. And so it was a little bit of a frantic situation, but the city helped us make it happen because they know that we do this event every year. And there were some unforeseen things there. But Tanya, I love to hear about that being 4 months in advance for y'all.
Yeah, because we closed two streets and it was the street barriers, and there was just a lot of back and forth and a lot of clarification for it. The street barriers, like the permit was 100, the street barriers cost over 1,000. So beware of that. Like I want to close the St. John's Bridge in December. It's 12,000 for barriers alone. So and then also know, like we had our event on a Saturday, they dropped the barriers off on Sunday or I'm sorry, Friday, and they didn't pick them up till Monday. But if somebody takes a barrier or, like there was a barrier missing, we get charged for that. So just be aware, everybody. It's not pretty.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Like in my experience, we typically do this small street fair and it's just on a small side street. We have like 4 barricades. So I can really see how for y'all doing larger events, especially incorporating a bridge or a district that, where you have a few streets happening, that it's really something that you want to get ahead of as much as possible. Wow. Well, that's exciting for St. John's. How cool. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? We just have a few minutes left. Any other questions? Okay. Otherwise, we can just wrap it up here, and I will follow up with a link to this recorded webinar and also the links that I shared in the chat and some resources there. I realized something that I could maybe share for y'all is maybe some past budgeting sheets that I've worked on and just changing some of the stuff on there, but with multiple tabs. It gets a little bit more into actually event planning, but I like using those sheets and then just creating different tabs for, staff, volunteers, the food thing, having a tab for really kind of each main section of the event. And then having that overall budget sheet where things get pulled into can help keep it a little bit more streamlined. So, I can go through the one that we used for summer nights last year and kind of clear out things that I maybe need to clear out and share that as well. I think that could be helpful for everybody. So thank you so much for being here today. This is an exciting time of year right now where everybody's starting to really get into planning their summer and fall events. It is game on time, and the more that you get excited about some of these like mundane things, I think the more that you feel empowered to like know what you're working with, and again, kind of get creative on how to like create more bang for your buck and have a really safe and fun event that goes really smoothly. There's nothing better than approaching your event being like, all of the permits are in, we're under budget, and we've extra money to play with. Everything's feeling great. There is no better feeling than that, I know from experience. So we hope to support you all in feeling that way as you move forward with your district events this year. Thanks for being here today, everybody, and thanks for all of the kind comments. And feel free to reach out if there's anything else. And we'll see you soon. Make sure to be here next Wednesday for Jacob's Lunch and Learn Wednesday.
Thank you, Sam.